Denver's mayor has turned in his annual self-review, and he says he's done great. Let's take a step back and examine his claim and what other city leaders think.
I think it's important that we're able to dig a little bit deeper on it.
As Coloradans await Trump pardons for storming the Capitol in his name 4 years ago today, a word about what we should remember, and something even more important than that. The Democrat who wants to be Colorado's next elections chief is careful not to criticize the mistakes made by the current Democrat in the job. And Denver pulls back on recycling service while still struggling to meet its promises about composting.
Compost is worth more to our city and to our environment than the recycling items that go into your purple bin.
Some say this whole show is rubbish. Watch and decide for yourself. Next. Denver's mayor says the city met his goals in 2024. Gun crime down, downtown investment up, thousands moved out of homelessness. Our Angeline McCall takes a closer look, including why some on city council are skeptical of the mayor's claims.
A reflection of 2024 for Mayor Johnston is an assessment of his major priorities.
If you look at 2024, what we found was that we delivered the largest reduction in street homelessness in recorded history.
The numbers, he says, lay out surpassed goals for housing the homeless community. Johnston says 2,233 people were brought indoors when the goal was 2,000. And another goal met, 3,000 units of long-term affordable units created.
That is entirely our focus, and that means getting people workforce support, housing support, mental health and addiction support. We've changed the way we provide that programming.
Yet other city leaders question whether the data really shows a success story for the All in Mile High program.
The numbers look good initially, but I think we really need to look at how we're long-term housing people.
Councilmember Stacey Gilmore says while homelessness has, yes, decreased in downtown Denver, it's increased in her district outside of the city center in Mount Bello.
And right now, I'm not seeing the resources being deployed to make sure that we're providing the people who are in our shelters with the supports that they need.
Johnston does lay out the cost of these services in contracts. Estimates put the total at $155 million over 18 months, about $65 million more than expected. Councilmember Gilmore still has questions, though, about the true cost.
So we need to have these hard conversations about what's the true cost, what's it going to, what's working, what's not working, and how do we do better.
Johnston's reflection of the year shows goals largely met, with his own council asking questions about the numbers and what's next.
But we will make changes to programming whenever we see that there's dollars being spent and not delivering the outcomes we want.
Besides homelessness and affordable housing, something else Johnston talked about was his plan to invest $570 million into downtown Denver. One of the critiques from Gilmore is that we've seen a big investment in the city center when that same investment hasn't been made, for instance, in her district and others that are often serving marginalized communities.
There's always going to be competing priorities, right? But at least what the mayor said he was going to set out to do at the beginning of the year, he stayed on track on those priorities. People can judge whether or not he succeeded, but we haven't shifted lanes in the middle of the year.
No, and certainly he has stayed laser focused on some of the main priorities that we've seen as well.
All right, Angeline McCall, thank you very much. I want to bring in meteorologist Corey Reppenhagen as things could get interesting around here, these parts, tonight, tomorrow.
Yeah, I think tomorrow morning could be really interesting on the streets here. During the morning drive, we'll have some moderate to even some heavy snow with some really cold conditions. We already have some snow starting to fall here across mainly the northern Front Range. You can see it here in Larimer County, just light stuff and kind of isolated at the moment, but that's going to fill out as we go through the night. It's going to be mainly an I-25 event here where you see these winter weather advisories in place. Generally, the potential here is 1 to 6 inches across the board. Denver has the highest potential here. I think we'll get into that 2 to 5 range. As far as the timing here, right during your morning drive, the red outline here is the highest impact here between 2 a.m. and about noon tomorrow is when we'll see that snow in the Denver metro area. I'll have more on totals and impacts coming up in just a minute.
Today, Congress certified the 2024 presidential election without fear for Congress members' lives or any chance to hang the vice president. There was no mob violently storming the Capitol today to stop the proceeding. Vice President Kamala Harris presided over her own defeat, a ceremony that took less than half an hour.
Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes.
There was a ton of security in Washington today as a result of the violence of January 6, 2020. But no one challenged Trump's victory inside the Capitol, not with their words, not with physical force. It was a typically American, peaceful transfer of power. Quite the contrast to 4 years ago when Trump and his allies pressured Vice President Mike Pence to block certification of Trump's loss to keep them in power. Pence refused, and a pro-Trump mob stormed the Capitol, some beating police officers and calling for Pence's execution. Trump has called the January 6th mob patriots, warriors, and victims. Trump has specifically downplayed the convictions of rioters convicted of attacking police officers, suggesting that they were treated unfairly by the system. Here's a reminder of the Coloradans who may soon be pardoned for the January 6th attack at the Capitol. At least 20 Coloradans could receive Trump pardons for the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Jacob Clark from Trinidad's in prison. Capitol police officer said Clark hit him with a 2x4. Patrick Montgomery from Dougco tried to disarm an officer, kicked him in the chest. Jeffrey Sable charged officers and pulled an officer downstairs into the mob. He then tried to flee to Switzerland. He's in prison now. Todd Casey is awaiting trial, accused of shoving police, telling them he would have come locked and loaded if he knew they were storming the Capitol. Robert Gieswein did come prepared. Tactical gear, armed with a bat. Video shows him spraying police with some kind of substance. He's already out of prison. There's Pastor Tyler Etheridge from Colorado Springs who removed fencing and told the crowd to keep fighting as the mob beat law enforcement. Avery McCracken, Telluride, accused of punching and shoving officers. Hunter Palm, who went into former Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office shouting about killing her. She'd been moved to safety already. Thomas Hamner from Peyton, sentenced for fighting officers outside the Capitol. Cleet Keller, the former Olympian who wore his Olympic jacket to storm the Capitol. Matthew Melson from Wheat Ridge, facing trial for pushing an officer and trying to grab the officer's baton, and the list goes on. Coloradans involved with the January 6th attack on the Capitol, or as President-elect Donald Trump now says, a day of love. As Coloradans await pardons from President-elect Donald Trump for storming the Capitol and attacking police on January 6th, as Trump rewrites history, memory holding the violence, calling it a day of love instead, it's worth saying out loud, you don't need the government's permission to remember the truth, to remember what you saw and heard that day when Trump supporters stormed the Capitol and attacked law enforcement in a failed attempt to stop the certification of an American election and keep him in power. You saw it in real time. There are tens of thousands of hours of video footage that led to all those convictions. You watched it happen. A president has the power to wipe clean criminal records, but not wipe clean minds and memories. But I'd also encourage you not to get so lost in remembering the last attempt to overthrow American democracy that you don't think seriously about the next one. Because of all the justifications for the January 6th attack on the Capitol, one has always stood out to me as the most chilling. Those who say they weren't trying to overthrow the government because if they really were, they would have succeeded. That's disguised as an excuse about the past. It's really a threat about the future. Let's talk trash and recycling and compost. How cities in the Denver metro area pick up what we throw out. Take Denver. For 2 years, Denver has charged taxpayers extra for trash pickup while providing weekly recycling for free. As the city now cuts recycling pickups in half and still isn't offering composting to about half of Denver, our Marshall Zellinger looks at how Denver and other cities compare.
Black, purple, and green. A unique combination of colors. Except in Denver, almost half of the city is still waiting for the green.
I know my neighbors have been calling me, even though I left office, to try to get their bins sooner.
Robin Kinich pushed for Denver's pay-as-you-throw program when she was a city councilwoman, where you pay a fee based on the size of your trash bin and get free recycling and composting. Except 4 of the city's 9 solid waste districts have yet to get green compost bins.
Compost is worth more to our city and to our environment than the recycling items that go into your purple bin.
Compost or organic material in the landfill is a major contributor to methane. So if we can really encourage people to get familiar with that program and to opt into that program and divert that yard waste food debris, that's going to be really beneficial for us.
Initially, Nina Waysdorf and the city's solid waste division planned to educate residents as the city slowly rolled out the green carts. City Council just sped that up, all residents will have a compost bin by the end of March, but recycling moves to every other week.
What we found in 2 years of doing weekly recycling is that we really didn't see a significant increase in the amount of recyclables that we were collecting.
Right now, 6% of waste is composted in Denver. The city believes that could be 50%. Based on this graphic, residents would only need the smaller, cheaper trash bin.
It's very, very similar to how cities charge for water and sewer. You get charged for the amount you use.
Randy Moorman with EcoCycle, an organization that seeks zero waste, put together a comparison of cities that now charge for trash pickup, or what's called volume-based pricing. The larger the trash bin, the higher the cost. Broomfield is about to start this charge at the end of March.
This creates a more fair and equitable system so that you are using less trash and recycling more. You're going to pay less than your neighbor who may be producing more trash.
Kyle, part of the concern from viewers that we've heard from is that the opt-out fee, it comes with a fee. You don't want to take part in this. You still have to pay the minimum, and you just won't get the service, but you're still paying for something that you don't utilize.
At the end of the day, people are paying the same for less in Denver.
Yeah, the idea of shrinkflation. The city has said by not running these recycling trucks for half-empty bins, you're actually benefiting by better air quality because these are low fuel-efficient vehicles that they're going to keep parked while they do what needs to be collected, the compost and the trash. Something will definitely follow as it gets rolled out by the end of March.
Okay, I mean, that tracks if it's true, right? That tracks. And you know who else will love those bins sitting out an extra week? The trash pandas. They love to get in there and clean out the yogurt that you don't get out of the jars. Marshall Zellinger, thank you. Your latest Word of Thanks microgiving campaign, supporting Habitat for Humanity of Metro Denver in celebration of former President Jimmy Carter's life of service, has now raised more than $30,000. And all of that goes to 2 home builds in Denver and Aurora this year, creating more affordable housing in our community. Thank you. You are approaching $14 million worth of microgiving through Word of Thanks. If you know of a nonprofit that's making an impact anywhere in Colorado that could use our help, please email me, next@9news.com. Doesn't have to be elaborate, just tell me what they're up to. You can text NEXT at 303-871-1491. The first major candidate to be Colorado's next Secretary of State to replace Jenna Griswold has very few words about the voting machine password breach under Griswold.
I can't really comment as to what was happening inside the Secretary's office because I wasn't there.
Conversation with Jeffco Clerk Amanda Gonzalez, next. The 2026 race for Colorado Secretary of State is on, with Jeffco's Democratic Clerk Amanda Gonzalez getting into the race to replace term-limited Democratic Secretary of State Jenna Griswold, who's likely running for governor. Griswold's time in office has been plagued with a series of errors, sending voter registration invitations to non-citizens and inadvertently posting voting machine passwords online. When Clerk Gonzalez and I sat down today, she was careful not to criticize Griswold's errors. What did you think of the office's communication around that? Not telling the clerks until it became public and not even committing that they were ever going to tell the public except that the leak leaked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a hard day. I'm not going to lie. And I can't really comment as to what was happening inside the Secretary's office because I wasn't there.
Do you believe the Secretary of State's office made mistakes in how they handled the issue?
Yeah. Not being in that office, it's really hard to say, and I want to be fair. It is hard to say when I don't have all of the information that they had.
I'm guessing there's a lot of voters out there who have less information than you do that have a pretty good idea of whether they appreciated the handling or not. Yeah. Are you willing to weigh in on what you thought of the handling?
I mean, what I can tell you is how I handle things in my office.
All right, we'll move on then. Okay. You have run elections, which is not a requirement for the job of Colorado Secretary of State. Current Secretary of State hasn't run elections. Does it matter?
I think it does. Yeah, I think that having the experience of running elections for about 500,000 people is really important, because when we think about election security, when we think about bringing people into the process, when I think about voter turnout, right, those are the key jobs of a Secretary of State, and I've got to do them on the ground.
Clerk Gonzalez also talked about her background leading the progressive watchdog group Common Cause. She talked about why she opposes Republican efforts to mandate voter ID laws. And she sidestepped questions about whether she would continue to use taxpayer money to promote herself through ads and billboards, as she's done in Jeffco. Our full, unedited 18-minute conversation is on the Next YouTube channel and on 9news.com.
Well, it looks like we've got a pretty decent snow coming our way here tomorrow morning across the Front Range and mainly the Denver metro area. Here's the most likely snow totals here. 2 to 5 inch probability here in the core part of the Denver area and maybe 3 to 6 potential out on the higher suburbs. But it's not really the totals, it's the timing with this one that'll get you. Here we look at Futurecast here tonight by about 10 o'clock. We're not in full coverage, but quite a few snow showers across the Front Range. By about midnight, 2 a.m., it fills out completely and we all get some snow here overnight, and it stays snowy all the way through the morning commute until about 10 a.m. That's when it'll start to move out, and by the afternoon hours, it's just scattered stuff after that snow. So after the 9 News Weather Impact Day tomorrow, it stays cold. Even here on Thursday, we have a chance for snow for the kickoff of the National Western Stock Show Parade. Kyle?
What we need to do is identify those students who are struggling so that they can get the help that they need.
When a mental health crisis overlaps with a shortage of mental health professionals, does AI have a role? That's next. The state of Colorado is now mandating mental health screenings for 6th through 12th graders. Our Byron Reed looks at how AI could help.
Every problem has a solution.
We know that depression and anxiety are 2 of the most common mental health problems adolescents face.
For Professor Johnny Kim, helping to solve mental health issues is part of his job in DU's Graduate School of Social Work.
I teach and do research on a clinical therapy model called solution-focused brief therapy, which is becoming very popular in the school settings by school clinicians.
Kim was recently selected by Ellipsis Health to work on a research study around a voice app that uses artificial intelligence, or AI, to detect possible flags for depression and anxiety in students between the ages of 11 and 17 years old.
It utilizes both the acoustics in terms of how words are said, the tone, the speech, the rapidness of it, as well as semantics, what is said. This is sort of what they would see at the beginning.
Students log onto a mobile device like their laptop, cell phone, or tablet and speak into the microphone for about 90 seconds to determine what level of depression or anxiety a student may have within a minute.
It doesn't necessarily diagnose, but it can be used more as a screening tool.
Kim has been working with Aurora Public Schools and Aurora Mental Health and Recovery to help validate the study.
And this is a way that could be utilized, that could be disseminated across large school districts, both in rural, urban, and can be very time efficient as well as cost efficient.
Kim hopes the research will help students and their parents figure out what's going on so they can get the help they need.
Help students really figure out how they can get the help and resolve the current situation so that they can succeed both academically as well as personally.
For Next, I'm Byron Reed.
You sent in a mess load of feedback tonight. Back with that next. Feedback runs the gamut tonight. Text, Kyle, what's a trash panda? It's a raccoon. Dig into the trash. They're trash pandas. Steve says, wanted to thank you for keeping the January 6th insurrection in perspective. Kathy says, thank you for the commentary on the January 6th insurrection. Yes, we all saw it happen in real time, and we shouldn't forget it. She said you had the courage to speak up about that. It doesn't take a lot of courage to speak up about it. We're just talking about what we all saw. She says, keep up the good work. Catherine wrote in preemptively with feedback to say, I will watch Next tonight to see if you have the balls to report on January 6th and what actually happened at the Capitol. Catherine, hope I passed your testicular fortitude test. See you next time.